All right, what's up, everybody? Making sure everything's working good here. Got a lot to talk about. I know now it feels like forever since the last time I was on here just because it's been 2 days and the weekend. But hope you guys had a great weekend. We're going to get into some stuff here soon. Got some stuff to cover in college baseball. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Juan Soto deal because how can you not talk about that? And we'll see some people's reactions to it. What I think, is it a good deal? Is it way too much money? Is it going to pan out? Everything like that, we'll cover it. And first thing, like always in these streams, guys, I give you kind of a sneak peek into what my daily video will be about that's coming out later. What's up, Canes? Canes in the chat, everybody, of course, because why would he not be? He always is. Most dedicated viewer. And we appreciate you, Canes, for driving the conversations on here. Though we got some people that are starting, not quite on your level, but are getting there. And, okay, so first off, guys, like the most important choices you can make at the end of the recruiting process, which to me is like the end of the recruiting process is you're on campus, and what do you do from there? How do you establish yourself? How do you get on the coach's good side? Obviously, we'll talk about that as well. But to me, guys, and obviously, again, a sneak peek into kind of video I got coming out later, and these are decisions and choices you can make as a player. Obviously, show this video that's coming out to your sons if you're a parent watching, because sometimes we think that everything we do has to be centered around baseball, and that's just not the case. So we'll get into that now. And the most important choice you can make, one, guys, this is one of three, really. And the first thing is like you have to be the driver of everything that you do in this game. It's great if you have parents that are pushing you, but eventually you're going to be on your own. And when you get on campus, mom and dad aren't there anymore. And this is the first separator in an elite player and a guy who maybe doesn't grow as much once he gets on campus because he doesn't have his parents there pushing him anymore. And listen, I get it. Mom's not there making dinner for you, cooking your meals. Your dad's not there to be like, hey, let's go hit in the cage. And you have a lot more distractions. A lot easier to play some video games, go out and party. You got to do your homework as well. So there's a lot more distractions when you get on campus. There's a lot more freedom. And with that freedom are things that can lead you away from kind of what your goals are. So first off, before you step on campus, that's summer before you step on campus, guys. Please do not take the summer off. Do not. Listen, I get it. It's the most tempting thing in the world. Most of you guys now, I mean, I was kind of before travel ball turned into what it has turned into now, but most of you guys have been playing a lot of games every summer since you were in middle school, maybe even before that. And it's tempting to say, well, I'm committed now. Let me just take an easy summer. Maybe you're still working out in the weight room. You're getting stuff done there, but nothing compares, and my dad was on last week and said this, nothing compares to your in-game reps. At bats, innings pitched, it allows you to continue to develop, to gain more confidence, to learn more about yourself as a player. And what most people do wrong is they take that summer off. And what ends up happening? They get on campus, and they're now in a situation where they're surrounded by guys of fairly equal talent. Right? The talent parity goes from this in high school to this in college. So now everybody's pretty much on a level playing field talent-wise. You're still going to have your guys on your team that are a little bit better. You're going to have your superstars that are better in more significant ways. But again, most people are around the same talent. Playing a summer schedule that is still competitive, again, the first impression, guys, where you win your spot in a starting lineup or as a first guy off the bench or a dependable guy in the bullpen, or maybe even like a midweek starter as a freshman. You do that in the fall. You do that where you show coaches that you can put up a quality at bat every time you're in there. You control the strike zone as a pitcher. You control the strike zone as a hitter. These are things that kind of get overlooked because most guys out there don't realize how important that freshman fall is. One of the biggest decisions I made in my career is that summer, after I had committed to Georgia Tech, I decided to go all in, play another competitive schedule because I knew I wanted to start as a freshman. I wanted to be in the starting lineup, and I knew if I took the summer off, I was not going to be prepared for that freshman fall when I was facing guys with more velocity, more consistent off-speed stuff than I had ever faced. So I played a competitive summer schedule. Doesn't mean you have to go crazy, but you want to be ready to go when that fall happens. You want to be ready to go when that freshman fall starts. And the guys I saw that took the summer off didn't do much in the summer. It took them longer to get going. And a lot of times that's the difference between a guy making the travel roster or making the starting lineup than a guy who's at home when you're traveling in the ACC or in the SEC or wherever. So please, if you're out there, guys, play a competitive schedule in the summer. Your first now more than ever, guys, the transfer portal wasn't a thing when I was playing. You weren't afraid for the most part that you were going to get your scholarship cut. Obviously, you couldn't be told you were going to have to go in the portal. So now it's even more competitive. And that fall is where you make the impression that this is a guy we want to stick around. Maybe in today's era, maybe you're not a guy that's going to start as a freshman, but certainly you're a guy that, you know what, next year our shortstop's going to get drafted, and this guy's shown us a lot. He's definitely going to be a guy that travels with us. He's going to be, someone goes down, he's a guy that can play for us. But that's where most guys go wrong, is they try to take it easy in the summer. So Canes, totally agree. The incoming freshmen need to play summer ball, 100%. Multiple scouts that were in town from the WWBA and Boca told me at our fall scrimmages that freshmen need to play in the summer because everyone else is playing in the summer but them. 100%. I actually say this in the video coming out later, that the guys on your team that are on your college team that were freshmen and now are trying to get in the starting lineup, or maybe they are in the starting lineup, they're playing in the college summer leagues with a wood bat. They're playing against better competition. They're playing anywhere from 35 to 70 games if you're in the Northwoods League. So they're getting close to a full season worth of at-bats in the summer leagues. So if you're not playing at all, those guys are going to be way ahead of you. Max Galvin from Miami had 96 RBIs in the summer. Our freshman outfielder had none. Yeah. And trust me, guys, like those players, let's say a guy didn't get any playing time and then he went out in the summer league and he hit 350 and, 7 or 8 home runs, drove in a lot of runs. That guy's got an advantage now coming into fall baseball. Because, man, he competed with a wood bat, put up really good numbers. They're going to be eyeing him and looking at him as the guy that's going to come in to contribute. So if you're not playing in the summer at all, you're behind that guy big time. And you're already behind that guy no matter even if you do play, because he's put up numbers against college competition with a wood bat. Now, the even more important decision that I think helped me in my career tremendously, when you get on campus as a freshman, vitally important that you surround yourself with guys in your freshman class, guys that are older than you, that are hard workers and have the same goal in mind as you. They're trying to get to professional baseball. They want to win championships in the conference. They want to play for the NCAA tournament. The guys you do not want to be around are the guys that, make fun of the guys that work hard, the guys that are going out and partying every night. I'm not saying you can't have some fun in college. Don't get me wrong. But the guys that go out and party all the time, 90% of the time, they're not guys in the starting lineup, or they're guys that will end up losing their spot because their focus is on that more so than developing themselves and trying to get to professional baseball. I had a lot of guys in my freshman class that we were a highly ranked recruiting class, a lot of guys that got drafted. And so I immediately surrounded myself with players in my freshman class that their goal was, we're going to work hard, we're going to get in the starting lineup, etc. So I remember my freshman year, first day on campus, my roommate is Daniel Palka, who played in the big leagues, hit 27 bombs his rookie year in the big leagues. And he says, "Hey, Kyle, you guys want to go hit in the cage?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." Meanwhile, I'm 5'9", 150 pounds. He's 6'2", 6'1", 215 pounds, pure muscle. We hit off the tee. I'm hitting with the metal bat. Sounds like a little BB gun going off with the metal bat. He gets a wood bat out, and he's hitting balls that sound like a shotgun off his bat. And I remember thinking to myself, man, if this is what everybody looks like here, what am I doing here? Holy cow. And suffice to say, I ended up sticking around. Dan's still one of my best friends that I see regularly to this day. And I was lucky to have him as a freshman roommate because he wanted to push, he wanted to work, he wanted to get to professional baseball, he wanted to win championships, and my goals were the same. So I surrounded myself with guys in that freshman class that had that same goal. And then I found some of the upperclassmen, like a Jed Bradley or a Mark Pope, who both Jed Bradley ended up pitching in the big leagues, was a first-round pick. Mark Pope was a fourth-round pick, ended up pitching up to AAA. And they were guys that obviously, it's like, these guys have been very successful in their college career. I'm going to watch them. I'm going to follow them. I'm going to hang out with them and see what they do and try to mimic that behavior, because that's the kind of player that I want to be. So if you're committed right now and a year from now you're going to be on a college campus, less than a year from now, make sure that you find guys like that, upperclassmen that you can follow, that are going to show you kind of the roadmap to get to where you want to be. And then the guys in your freshman class that aren't just obsessed with getting to college and going out and partying every night. Because again, those guys typically are going to fall off because they're not focused on what their goal is. They're going to fall behind in the classroom. And I'm not saying I never did that. Some of my best friends in college, we've been there those nights where, hey, you up all night in the library trying to get work done to make sure everything's in order. But most guys that are goal-oriented and are following guys ahead of them, they're going to get to where they want to be. We just cut two of ours. We just cut two guys that were very talented because all they did was party. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kids, unfortunately, Canes, that, and this is a lot of times the big game changer is in high school. A lot of kids are so much more talented than the competition around them. I talk about that, the talent parity. In high school, your player that's committed to Miami is so much more talented and better overall than players they're playing in high school, that they don't necessarily need an approach at the plate. They've had so much success. They've never dealt with failure, and they're so much better now. They feel like they don't need to get all this work in when they get to campus. They feel like, well, I'm a star. I'm going to stay that when I get to college. And so they're like, you know what? I'm going to go out and have fun, whatever. And like I said, guys, I mean, I was one of the lowest ranked guys in my recruiting class. A lot of guys ahead of me never touched the field. A lot of guys ahead of me ended up not playing a lot. But the guys that were focused and wanted to get to professional baseball, wanted to win championships, they all made the lineup. Maybe it was their sophomore year. Maybe it was sometime in their freshman year where they got in. But, my first game, opening night for Georgia Tech, we had 5 freshmen in the starting lineup. And we still ended up having one of the best offenses in the country because we had a group of guys that were talented, but were also dedicated and wanted to do something. We knew the pedigree. We knew the history of Georgia Tech at that time. Again, the year I committed, they were number 1 team in the country. So we knew, hey, if we're going to play here, we got to be serious. And I think it's something that, again, this was before the transfer portal, before it was so much harder to break into a starting lineup. And like you said, Canes, the guys that are coming in from the portal and the guys that are coming in that were there the year before, they're playing summer ball all summer with a wood bat in their hands, or they're pitching, and they're getting a lot of reps against college competition. So if you're a high school kid out there, make sure that you're doing as much as you can that summer. Now, a lot of schools now, and Canes, we've talked about this, are having guys come in for that July semester. That's a little like a short summer semester to get them acclimated, get them, working in the weight room, everything like that. But what you miss out with that is you're missing out on getting reps in summer ball. So I understand why some schools are doing that. And if you're an in-state school and you have a kid that can come in but then can still go play summer ball, that's kind of the best. But that coming in early and all of a sudden a kid doesn't get a chance to continue playing, it's like they're kind of behind the eight ball at that point. BA, how involved do coaches generally get in making sure their players are keeping it clean off the field? It'd be a shame if they have to waste time having to worry about guys staying disciplined. Well, BA, I can tell you, they're definitely constantly worried about that, especially with freshmen, because you feel like if a kid makes it through his freshman year and he hadn't gotten in trouble on campus or, out partying and stuff like that, usually the kid at least is smart enough that he knows when he needs to go home. He knows, how to stay around or get away from environments where issues can arise. But coaches are definitely involved in making sure that standard is at least known by the players about the coaching staff. So like one of the first meetings you'll have when you get on campus is with the coaches, and they'll talk about and this is pretty much what every staff will say, like, guys, listen, we know you're in college. We know, we're not telling you not to have fun and go have fun every once in a while. But they're pretty clear, the guys that do that all the time, and there's a good percentage of guys that do that. I played with guys that were really talented, and by their sophomore year, they're off the baseball team and joining a fraternity. Nothing wrong with that, but that was not my goal. That was never something I even thought of as being an option. And so coaches try to stay on top of it as much as they can, BA, but at the end of the day, they can't control really anything that a player does. And, I played with a guy who came in with my freshman recruiting class. He didn't go to one class the entire semester, failed out, and then dropped out. So, you can only have so many meetings with a kid and say, hey, listen, you need to get your act together. Some guys just don't respond to it. And they're not able to be disciplined and take responsibility for the actions that they're doing. And I played with a lot of guys that were really talented in college that, drug tests come around, they get popped. Or, guys getting, all of a sudden police show up at a party and they're getting in trouble. And it happens more than once. Most coaches are pretty lenient. It happens once, they're going to give you a second chance. They're going to be stern with you. You're going to have your strength coach is going to be running you, conditioning you in a harsh way to try to let you know, hey, there's consequences for this. You miss a tutoring session, you're going to be in trouble, at least without an excuse. So they enforce this stuff pretty seriously, but at the end of the day, some guys just don't get it. And some guys never get in trouble, but they're still going out all the time. And so it's affecting how they play. Think about it. If you're going out and drinking 4 nights a week and you're trying to compete for a starting spot, there's not many guys that can pull that off. Not many guys. And so coaches try to do the best they can. 34-man roster might help keep kids on the straight and narrow. Yeah, 100%. And one of the things I say is when a school's looking at your transcript and looking at your GPA, there's 2 things they're looking at. One is, how much academic money can we get this kid? But the other aspect is, what kind of student is he? Are we worried that when he gets away from mom and dad, are we going to have to be the ones staying on top of him, making sure he's getting his schoolwork done? And so they're trying now, like you said, BA, with 34-man roster, you're going to be pretty, and again, we don't know the fine print yet. Like I keep saying, But if that 34-man roster is set and you can't bring anyone else in after it's set, which again would be kind of ridiculous, you're going to be pretty particular with the guys you bring in, because no longer are you going to say, well, this guy's grades aren't great, but he's such a good baseball player. You may pass on that kid because all of a sudden you're thinking, well, if he's academically ineligible and then we're down a man, what are we going to do? That's the issue. Michael Sarzen, never skip a class ever. Yeah, and you know, Michael, it's funny because like your freshman year especially, usually your academic advisor for the baseball team, about once every couple of weeks, he's making the rounds at the 8 o'clock classes. Because as a freshman, you know, you're typically put in a bunch, like almost every day you got an 8 a.m. class. And part of that is you got early workouts. So you may have a 6 a.m. lift that day. And then you got 8 a.m. workout or 8 a.m. class. And yeah, you miss that 8 a.m. class and the academic advisor's there, you're in for some tough conditioning. Strength coach is going to be putting you on Jacob's ladder, making you run half laps, gassing you. And I don't think I ever got in trouble for that. But one of the things we would do as freshmen, we had a group text and it'd be like, hey, I remember countless times where, you know, one of our guys wasn't in class and all of a sudden 15 minutes before class, we'd see our academic advisor. His name was John Sayer. We'd send out the text, hey, Sayer's here. If you're not here, get here. And, you know, we'd have class, you know, other side of campus. And if you you couldn't drive and you were taking like the tech trolley or something, try to get to class, that was not going to be reliable to get you on time. So we'd have guys ride a bike, sprint. We'd have guys sprint to class and run in, you know, as long as you were there, I think 5 minutes after class started, by 5 minutes into class, you were okay. And, you know, you had kids sprinting in, barely able to breathe, and they get in just in time. And, you know, you'd get the nod of approval from our academic advisor or something. But certainly as a freshman, not advisable to miss class. And, you know, I'm not going to say I was perfect in making every single class I ever had to go to. There's some classes where attendance isn't mandatory, and you know, every once in a while maybe you feel like I'm just not going to go today. And listen, that's understandable, but on a consistent basis, you want to be making it to class, because if you're in class and you're paying attention, those tests are going to be easier. If you're in class and it's a 45-minute class, 50-minute class, if you can just pay attention for 50 minutes, it's going to save you a whole lot of studying when the exams come around and those midterms come around. And, you know, you set yourself up well early in the semester, you're not sweating it as much when you get to those finals at the end of the year. So certainly don't skip class as a freshman, especially those morning classes, because you may pay for it with the amount of oxygen in your lungs later in the week. And certainly, like, that's how pretty much every coaching staff is. They're going to have a punishment ready for you if you're missing class and not getting it. And if, you know, the grades are starting to slip, like, you're going to get put on academic probation, where, you know, you're going to have to be in a tutoring session with every single class you're in, and stuff like that. So you just don't want to be in that situation. But coaches are pretty, you know, BA, back to what you said. I mean, coaches are pretty on top of that stuff. They get the reports from the academic advisor. You know, that first exam comes around, they know where players are at. They'll have meetings with guys that are not looking good, and kind of try to say, listen, hey, you got to pick it up. You want to be in the lineup, you better be academically eligible, or nothing we can do. We can't play if you're not academically eligible. And so certainly coaches are going to stay on top of that. But you're right, Michael, like, just don't, especially as a freshman, you're a junior and you know what you're doing and you know how it works and everything. You want to skip a class every once in a while, fine. But your freshman year, you want to start out on the right foot. And so, guys, like, one of the things I want to talk about now is, like, if I can pull this up and we'll look at it. Obviously, Juan Soto signing a massive deal. And we'll look at it, and I'll give you kind of my take on it. Here we go. We're going to pull this up here so you guys can see. Okay. Now, let me make this so you guys can see it a little bit better. Mets agree to record-breaking $15 million deal. 15-year deal worth $765 million. Now, right as the winter meetings were starting, this deal was finalized on Sunday. It is by far the largest pact in deal in Major League Baseball history. The deal, which the Mets have not confirmed because it's pending a physical, contains a full no trade clause, $75 million signing bonus, and opt out after 5 seasons, and no deferred money. So all these big deals you've seen the Dodgers doing have been for like deferred money, meaning it's a 10-year deal where the team has control for 10 years, depending on the opt-outs and everything. But then there's a lot more money after that, like Bobby Bonilla style, where he's still getting paid decades after he's done playing. Same is true with a lot of these deals the Dodgers have done. A lot of deferred money. No deferred money in this case. The Mets will have the ability to void Soto's opt-out clause after the 2029 season if they boost the average annual value of the final 10 years of his deal from $51 million to $55 million, according to a source. In that case, the overall deal would be for 15 years and $805 million. Okay. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts of this deal is. I want to talk to you about how these deals are thought of in the front office sense, but for the majority of Major League Baseball, since contracts have started getting really big, as a player in the first 6 years of your career, so 3 years you get arbitration, and then you get 3 years arbitration, and after 6 years of service time, you get to full free agency. Those first 6 years, you are generally speaking underpaid for what you bring to the team. So you're underpaid for the value you bring. Like if Juan Soto, his first year, is doing what he's doing, and he's making major league minimum, he's underpaid to what his value is. So a lot of these deals that are made, all of a sudden you're overpaying for what you get. And that's known because for the first 6 years you were undervalued, underpaid. And those last couple of years of arbitration, generally you're getting paid around kind of what your value is. Now, this deal to me is probably going to end up really hurting the Mets. Now, are they going to feel that in the first 4 or 5 years? No. But certainly as Soto ages, again, he's a defensive liability in the outfield. He's not a good defender. He's a DH. You're paying him $51 million a year to essentially he's going to be a DH. Even though if you put him in the outfield, you're losing value from his defensive ability. But let's look at it from an objective standpoint. Is this going to make the Mets better this year and for the next 6 years? 100%. 100%. But it's a 15-year deal, guys. He is under contract with the Mets until he's 41 years old. The only guy who was valuable late in his career like that was Barry Bonds, and we know how that kind of went. But I think people are not looking at this. They're either saying, "Oh, this is a terrible deal." If you're a Mets fan, you're so excited. You think it's an amazing deal. If you're not a Mets fan, you're saying, "What a terrible deal," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is this deal is going to be really good for the Mets for 6-7 years, maybe. Again, he's got opt-outs in the 29 season. So 5 years from now, if he's still balling, the problem is this: he can opt out, but the likelihood that a team is going to pay him more than he's making right now, if he opts out, is probably low, because then he's going to be 31 years old and teams are going to look at him as such. He's aged. He's probably going to be not playing outfield much anymore, if any. I mean, that could start in the next year or two. But all of a sudden, if he's DHing all the time, or a vast majority of the time, no one's going to pay him $51 million to be a DH. And the other thing is this, like playing in Yankee Stadium really benefited him because of that wind tunnel and short right field porch. So how much were his power numbers increased this year just because for playing in Yankee Stadium? Albeit for the time it was. So I think Mets are going to really see the benefits of this. And again, like Mets ownership got all the money in the world. So it's not like they're going to not spend any more money this offseason. A. Reyes, hi there. Sorry for this joke. Nowadays, how the world is going, he can identify himself as a good outfielder, and that is okay. Yep. You're probably right, Reyes. You're probably right. And the thing is this, like, if he's an average defender in the outfield, fine, but he is a liability in the outfield. So what they could run into down the line is, like, let's say they got another kid coming up, or they get another player who's kind of the same thing, really good hitter, not a great defender, and they want to DH him. Well, one of them is going to have to play the field. So then you're losing defensive value somewhere. And, generally speaking, your misplays in the outfield and your guys that can't cover a lot of ground in the outfield, they cost you multiple runs, not one run. And like the old adage, like an error in the infield costs you one base, an error in the outfield costs you two, and probably a run or two. So outfield, which people don't think about a lot, like guys that are out there that can really shut down, really good defender in center, really good defenders in the corner. And the corner spots are the hardest positions in the outfield, at least read-wise, because you're always getting that top spin line drive or that slicing ball down the line. Like misplays lose you games in the corner outfield spots. So I think it's a ridiculous amount of money. I don't know if it's necessarily worth that much money, but this was the market. You had to pay this guy this much to get him. But like you're looking at Ohtani, 10 years, $700 million, and that guy is not only one of the best hitters in the game, and he hits for more power than Soto. He also stole 50 bases this year. And not to mention, he's a pitcher too. So I think that's the big comparison that's going on right now. Like Soto is getting probably more money on an annual basis because none of the money is deferred, like in Ohtani's deal. And Ohtani plays on both sides of the ball. And when he's good, when he's healthy pitching, he's one of the best. He's not like he's not one of the elite arms, but he's definitely up there. And so you're getting a front end starter. Probably he's a clear number 2 starter. And on a lot of teams, he'd be their ace. He's that kind of pitcher. And he's one of the best hitters in baseball. And he steals 50 bags a year. I mean, what he did this year, 50-50, even with the asterisks of like the limited amount of pickoffs. So I'm gonna stop sharing this and we'll get back to kind of what we were talking about. But I'm just curious kind of what your guys' thoughts were on that, because obviously that's what everyone's talking about in college baseball right now, is the Juan Soto deal. And is it a bad deal? I mean, typically we've all seen like the Pujols deal. These long-term deals like this never really pan out because the player just ages and his bat speed slows down. His body gets a little bit heavier, doesn't move as much, gets more injury prone. And Soto's had some injuries already early in his career. So how many more injuries is he going to take? I think that may be a reason, like they may just DH him going forward because they don't want to risk injury out there in the outfield when you're paying a guy this much money. But then you're like, I'm paying a DH $51 million a year. So he better be the best hitter in the game. And certainly he is one of the best hitters in the game. But is it going to be worth it in the long run? That time will tell. I think, again, for 5 or 6 years, people are going to say it's 100% worth it, everything like that. And then as he continues to age and gets into his 30s, it's going to be like, wait, we got this guy for 10 more years? But who knows? Maybe he'll be 36 and still raking and dropping bombs, and who knows? But again, then it's a cost-benefit analysis. Like at DH, what numbers does he have to put up consistently as a DH to be worth $51 million a year? And again, in that contract in 2029, if they want to void all his opt-out clauses, they have to pay him an extra $4 million a year. So if they make that decision, then he's locked in with the Mets. And is it going to be a scenario where when he's 36 and you got 5 years left in that contract and you're paying him $55 million a year, you're like, wait, where does this guy go? So again, I mean, it's gonna be a determining factor is going to be how healthy does he stay, how consistent does he stay as a bat. You're not expecting anything at defense wise, and I think a lot of people's concerns about his defense are warranted, because if you're going to spend this much money on a guy, you kind of want him to be impactful on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. Like if he was a premier center fielder and he was putting up these numbers, 100% money's worth it, potentially. But again, it's just like as they age, guys start getting hurt more, they miss more games. And like you look at Mike Trout, like one of the greatest players probably to ever play, depending on how his longevity continues. But I mean, he's hurt every year. He's missing significant time in the season every year, and he's getting nowhere near this money. Nowhere near this money. So time will tell, but I think in the long run, the Mets are going to be, if they win a few World Series, it'll be worth it, right? That's what this is about. This is about winning a world championship now. So in the next 5 years, if they win a World Series or two, I think they'll be okay with making this deal. But if they don't win a World Series in the next few years, people are going to start saying, yikes. But guys, one of the things I also wanted to talk about today is how do you make a coach have your back from day one? Right? Because this is something I hear from parents a lot. Well, the coach just doesn't like him. The coach only plays the guys that he really likes. And again, that may be somewhat true in like travel ball or something, in a rare occasion. But in college baseball, guys, the coach is playing the best guys on the field. He's playing, and again, this is in his view, so maybe he could be making some mistakes, but he's not playing someone because like he likes them more. He's putting the best 8 position players on the field, and he's putting the best arms that he thinks on the mound. So please do not make that excuse that the coach just doesn't like him, stuff like that. I promise you, a coach liking you or not is totally in your control. How do you get a coach to have your back from day one? Well, you show up early to practice. You get early work in every day. You say, hey, Skip, or hey, one of the assistant coaches, hey, can you guys hit me some ground balls before practice? I've told you guys this before, but Justin Henry Malloy, who I got to see and congratulate for making the big leagues this past year at Georgia Tech. There was an alumni baseball tailgate where we had a lot of guys from decades ago to just a few years ago. And one of the things I'll never forget about Justin Henry Malloy was that he showed up every day and was like, hey, Rennie, can you hit me some ground balls at third base? I'd say, let's go, man. Let's do it. And then that guy ended up going to pro ball. He had a great season, got drafted in the 4th round, and he just balled his way up to the big leagues. Like he had one of the best work ethics on the team, and now he's in the big leagues. It's funny how that works. It's funny how guys that put in hard work every day, they generally get close to achieving their dreams, and he certainly has already done that. Now he's trying to build a career, everything like that. So be the guy that shows up early to practice. Get your early work in. Hey, coach, are we hitting early BP today? When games are coming up, even if you're not playing, show up an hour before you're supposed to show up. Get some work in. 2 guys that I coached that did this and were not starters when I was there at coaching at Georgia Tech. John Giesler, he's got his last year this year. He's going to be one of the anchors of that lineup. And Jaden Jackson, who's now off in the business world, was a really good shortstop. Jaden Jackson was one of the hardest workers on the team, and he got passed over by a few guys, whether I agreed or not. I thought he had earned the right to get plugged into a spot when a guy went down, but he kept his head down. He kept working hard, even though he was frustrated. And he eventually was a starter for most of the year his junior year and started all year his senior year. And that's because for 2 years when he wasn't playing, he kept working hard. Bill Wallace. Bill, welcome back, man. Like I said, Canes, we got, BA in here making comments consistently. Rhea's in here. Bill's here. Show up early, stay late, and ask good questions. No ass kissing. Yep. That's right. We would get on guys because we'd hit a lot of BP, and guys would want to go hit after practice, and we're like, hey guys, we're monitoring your bat speed, and like we don't want you to swing too much. But you also were like, nah, just let him do it, because that's the mindset you got to have. Like, you're always working, you're always trying to improve, you're always trying to get better. And again, those guys were in the starting lineup, even though sometimes we're like, guys, like, take a break tonight. You don't like your bat speed. Your bat speed's going down. We can see it in the bat sensors. Your bat speed's going down a little bit because you're swinging too much, and that is the case, guys. You can swing too much. Your bat speed will go down, and all of a sudden you may start compensating and creating issues. But at the same time, like I said, you're like, that's the mentality I want every player to have. One of the guys I coached was really talented. Showed up 2 minutes before stretch for every game. Showed up 2 minutes before stretch for every practice. And I individually talked to him multiple times and said, dude, show up an hour, please. Show up 45 minutes before practice. Show up 45 minutes for the game. Like, if you're making mistakes on the base paths and making mistakes defensively, and you're the last guy that shows up every day, like, it's not going to be hard for everyone else to be like, let's put someone else in there. And I told him, hey, you're a DH right now, but you can run. Please just work your tail off in the outfield, become an average defender in the outfield, and you're going to play professional baseball. Never did it. And I'm talking 4 or 5 meetings where I said this to him. Had an elite bat in college baseball, a lot of power, but was a DH. Never really worked on his defense. I tried to get him on a throwing program. He did not do it consistently, and he didn't get a chance to play professional baseball, and he should have. He should have. Carlos Thakar, hope I'm saying it right. At 15, what velocity should I be throwing to be on track to go D1? It's a hard question to answer, man, because Carlos, in development, especially in baseball, but mostly everything, development's not linear. So you're going to put in days and days and days and days of work, and you're going to see virtually no result. And then 4 months later, you're going to see this, boom. And then you're going to plateau. And that's how development typically goes. So I've worked with guys who were throwing 75 at 15, and then by the time they're a junior in their junior summer, they're throwing around 90 and they're committing to a D1 school. So there's no velocity you should be at. Like, if you're 15 and you can throw it in the low 80s fairly consistently, you're on the right track. But again, no matter what you're throwing at 15, you got so much time to develop. Get in the weight room, eat 5,000 calories a day, eat 150 plus grams of protein a day. And in 6 months, you're going to be 20 pounds heavier with more muscle. You're going to be throwing harder. I always tell guys, like, get on a velocity program. Velocity is the biggest gatekeeper at Division I and really at all levels. Like, you have to be at a certain velocity. For right-handed pitchers, most D1s are looking for guys that can at least top out 90, 91. And if you are a guy that sits high 80s, like, you better be able to command a couple pitches for strikes. And the more off speed you can command for a strike, the better. So there's not really a set velocity, right? Because everybody's different. There are certain kids at 15 that are throwing 90 and they never throw any harder. There are guys, like I said, that are throwing 75, and then by the time they're a junior, they're topping 90. So it's all about the work you're willing to put in at that age. You got plenty of time to put in so much work every single day. And in 2 years, when you're 17, you could be one of the best pitchers in the country if you're really willing to work. That should be your goal. Don't worry about velocity right now. Put the work in, the velocity will come. I had a stream with one of my good friends from professional baseball that pitched at Navy, Preston Gainey, and he said, Carlos, like, young players, young pitchers, especially right now, should be focusing on command. Because if you can command 3 pitches for strikes, the velocity can come. Like everyone's developing velocity now. But make sure while you're doing that, you're working on your command because that's going to be the big separator for you. Every right-handed pitcher I saw in college baseball last year that was like high 80s, touching 90, 91, that had 2 or 3 pitches he could throw for strikes, he dominated because college hitters are just not good at that. On to the next one. All right, Bill. And don't fight with head of player development. Yeah, guys, please be coachable. My dad said it best. You're going to have coaches you don't think know what they're talking about, you don't respect, but ultimately they're the authority over you. So nod your head, say yes, sir. I got chewed out in the dugout plenty of times when I thought I didn't deserve it. I didn't smart off back to the coach. I didn't say anything back. I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the guy making the decision. You want him on your side. So be respectful, even if you don't necessarily agree. From Maurice, you need to show the coach in practice every day you are the man. Playing time is earned. In championship programs, it is about practice, not politics. Hard work, not handouts. Ability, not agendas. 100%, dude. Put that on what are you running for president, Maurice, in the Dominican or what? I mean, that's like, I couldn't have said that better, man. 100%. I've told you guys this before. The reason I won the center field job my freshman year of college is every day in BP, I ran myself to death for an hour and a half, shagging fly balls in the outfield. I ran as hard as I could. I ran down every ball in the gap, off the wall, shallow, everything. So at the end of that fall, and my coaches, now I still keep in touch and have great relationships with. They're like, we knew at worst you were going to be one of the best center fielders in the ACC. And actually, I won my freshman year, I won Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC from a few publications. But I was first team All ACC as a center fielder as a freshman, and a lot of that was how many hits I took away on defense. So, guys, coaches see the work, man. They see what you do every day. They know when you're giving 100%. They know when you're just going through the motions. We know, we see it. We've been there, done that. We know when guys are just coasting. We know when guys are pushing themselves. Like Ari said, you put in the work every day. Again, in this era, you may not be in the starting lineup as a freshman, but you're going to make the travel roster. If you're a guy that they know can play multiple positions and you're going to play him at a high level, they know at minimum a guy goes down. We'll plug Kyle Wren in. He'll make all the plays, and we'll hope we can we'll hope he can give us some work with the bat. Like the next guy up is typically a defense first pick. We know he's not going to make mistakes on defense, and we're going to hope for the best with his bat. That was Jaden Jackson when he got his first shot starting. It was like, we know he's going to make all the plays and some really above average plays at short. We're going to hope for the best of the bat, and he ended up having a great year with his bat as well because he put the work in. Carlos, yes, sir, so right. I top out at 89, and it was like I was throwing 80 one week, and then 2 weeks later I was topping out 87. So for me, it kind of came in waves. Carlos, yeah, you're way ahead of the game, man. Way ahead of the game. So just keep working. Don't rest on what you have right now. Continue working. Like you said, you were throwing 80 one week, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have that one game or that one bullpen, and you're like, 87 comes out, and you're like, what was that? But where most guys like you go wrong is they're all of a sudden they're touching 90, and they're dominating kids at their age, because obviously that's going to be the case. Most 15-year-olds are just not going to be handling a pitch around 90 miles an hour. It's just not the case, especially with these tournaments where everyone's using a wood bat and they're sophomores in high school and the outfielders are playing deep infield. Makes no sense. But keep pushing. Keep working every day. See if you can get to 97. See if you can get to 95. That's the next step. And maybe you won't. Maybe you'll top out. Maybe by the time you get to college, you'll be 92, 93. But develop that command as well. Start working on those off-speed pitches. Develop an elite off-speed pitch. And not only make it elite, but make it something you can throw for a strike whenever you need to. Develop that changeup, man. It's the equalizer. Aris, standards not spite. Improvement not influence. Performance not people-pleasing. College is a business. You do not hit. If you do not hit, you get replaced. Simple. That's right. That's right. I think, and a lot of kids don't get this. They think, well, I'm in the starting lineup now, so I'm going to be given 4 weeks to get it going. And the reality is, no, they don't have 4 weeks. Like, typically, guys, especially in your big-time conferences like the ACC, SEC, you have your non-conference schedule. So you got 3 or 4 weekends at the beginning of the season where you're playing non-conference teams, a lot of teams from up north that are coming down to warm weather. that time of the season is the coaching staff's final evaluation for the guys they're going to go to war with in conference play. So if you're not having a lot of success against the non-conference competition, which is typically going to be lower competition, you may not get that starting nod when conference play comes. So you gotta, again, you can't press, but you have an approach, know what you're trying to do, and you're going to have success. But that time frame, those first 4 weeks of the season, are the coaches saying, okay, like you're probably going to have a few position battles where you're going with this guy day one, but if he doesn't show us enough, we're going to 2 weeks in, and we're going to put another guy in there. And then after those first 4 weeks, like these are the guys we're going to fight with, and then we're going to adjust from there. All right, to Paul McCord. What's the best drill to fix an armbar bat wrap? Okay, I'll tell you what I think is the best. Have the player, I don't have a bat. I got a bat. I'll use this marker. Have him in his stance, bat right in front of him, completely vertical. Don't think about his hands at all. Not at all. I'm striding, not thinking about my hands, and then I'm turning my lower half. And what this position does, which is so great, is a vertical bat position, is as the pitch is coming, your bat's gonna get into that slot, right? Your bat's not gonna stay here, but you don't need to consciously think about it. And this is a drill I would do with a lot of guys who had plane issues. And a lot of guys would end up taking it into the game because they had so much success with it in BP and on drills and stuff. But I like just setting the bat vertical. Don't think about your hands at all. Don't think about throwing your hands in the swing. When that pitch gets in your zone, you're turning that lower half, using that lower half to let that bat come through. And a lot of times this is the motion you'll see. You'll see this. You'll see it just kind of fall back into the slot. And a lot of times if it's a low pitch, you'll see it stay more vertical so it can get down. And if a high pitch, you'll see it flatten out up here because you're not consciously telling it to get in this position, which is fine, but it's making you less adjustable. So try that out. Let me know how it works. Come back in a few days. Let me know how it's working for you. But that's my favorite one. That's my favorite one, 100%. Do you have any tips? Any tips on getting faster? Yeah. So I was a speed guy. I did speed and agility still. Like, for where you're at with your velocity, Carlos, I was at that level with my speed. Like my sophomore year of high school, I ran a 6.5. So I was an elite runner for my age group my entire life. But it's like, Carlos, it's like anything else. How do you get stronger in the weight room? You lift heavier weight, right? How do you gain velocity? You're throwing the ball as hard as you can consistently over a period of time, and the arm muscles develop, the ligaments get faster, more durable, and then you can throw and more elastic, and you can throw harder. Same is true. If you want to get faster, just sprint. Run as fast as you can. Run like 10 wind sprints or 8 wind sprints every day or every other day. Every other day. And that body, you'll get faster. Now you can do footwork stuff and, weighted, like a jump squat with a lightweight jump squat where you're training your explosive muscles. Your explosive lifts like that can help as well. But like doing those explosive lifts, doing sprints, that'll make you faster. Running hill sprints, teaching you how to drive through your lower half. Running downhill is going to teach you how to achieve a higher top speed. So all those things can help. And swing the bat a lot. It takes a lot of swings to develop the muscle memory. Under stress, you will go back to bad habits, 100%. And this is what I talk about a bunch, Bill. And obviously, you know this I know you played professional baseball, but it's like what a lot of kids do wrong nowadays is they take what they're working on in drills and they start thinking about it in the game. And so now they're 100% of their focus isn't on reading the pitch and seeing the pitcher and adjusting and reacting. It's on, okay, make sure I do this drill thing that I've been working on. Exactly what Bill said. Do whatever you're working on in BP, that is for BP. Do it enough that it turns into muscle memory, and you don't want to be thinking about stuff like that in the box. We've all been there when we're struggling. We're like, I gotta figure out something. But whenever I tried to bring in a mechanical change or something in game and I was thinking about it too much, I never had a lot of success. It was when I just allowed what I've been working on to show up in the game and focus on my timing, my load, and then what am I looking for from the pitcher? Am I picking up the pitch well? You do that, then you'll be fine. And eventually what you're working on in BP and in the cage will show up in the game, like Bill said, from swinging. You do the drill or the task enough times over a period of time, it's going to show up. That first day you do it, it may not show up, but after a couple weeks, it's going to show up at some point. And one of the other things, guys, I wanted to talk about was like when you're making a decision now on schools, like with Elite Sports Advising, first off, guys, if you're looking for help, scan the QR code, fill out the form. We'll meet with you. One of our advisors or myself will meet with you and talk about, what we can do, where we think you are in the process, and how our process works and why we've been so successful, not only getting kids committed to schools, but to schools where they all of a sudden become a contributor from day one and get a lot of playing time. A lot of guys out there, and this is true from a lot of guys in the 25 class, and obviously what's happened to them has been nothing short of a nightmare because of what the NCAA's done. But a lot of guys were in that predicament because they were waiting too long to make a decision. They were looking for the perfect fit instead of a really good fit. And like with Elite Sports Advising, our number one goal is to find you the best fit possible. Meaning, out of all the options you have, where is going to give you the best chance to play right away and get developed by a great coaching staff? And so many guys in the 25 class were holding out, waiting for a better offer, waiting for a Power 4 school. And then after August 1st and after the summer, they're left with nothing. Because now that mid-major school 6 months ago that made you an offer and said, hey, we love you, you're going to have a chance to play, that's not there anymore. Because now they're looking for the Power 4 guys that are being decommitted and picking up those guys. Like guys at Division II right now in Florida, they're not going after any high school guys. They're looking for the portal guys that are dropping out and the high school guys in 25 that are still looking, that got dropped from Power 4s. So they're not looking for guys that in high school right now in D2. They're getting the portal guys that are now being cut and maybe some of the Power 4 high schoolers that had their scholarship taken away. Makes me laugh sometimes how parents complain to schools, call the coaches, demand an appointment with AD, ask to transfer to school. You can never hide a light under a rock. Yeah. Yeah, and this is something true. Like if parents out there that are watching, you can really impact your son's recruiting process in a negative way. If every game they come to as a coach, they see you pacing behind home plate and yelling things out to him, and getting frustrated when he messes up and everything, they're thinking in their mind, they're not only recruiting the kid, they're recruiting the parents. And if they have a feeling like, man, these parents are going to be a nightmare to deal with if, little Johnny doesn't start as a freshman, that may impact the school making your son an offer because they think, oh man, these parents are taking this way too seriously and they're going to be a headache for us for the next 3 years. I worked with a guy who was one of the most elite players in his class. And I had to have that conversation with his dad because I just said, when I come to the games, I'm like, dude, he's a kid. Just let him play. Stop taking it too seriously. You're making your son nervous because he's not only concerned with, having a good game, but also like, oh, my dad's out there. He's going to be frustrated after the game. He's throwing his hands up in the air. And he got it. And it wasn't an easy conversation to have, but I'm like, I'm trying to do what's best for the son in the recruiting process. And so I had to have that conversation. But you do not want to be a detriment to your son's recruiting process. Like, enjoy him watching him play and let everything else happen that's going to happen. Spoke with John Murphy last week. Great advice. Yeah, John's a stud. He's probably the most trusted guy in the college recruiting process in the Northeast, 100%. not like played at a high level, played professionally, coached at Army, Boston College. Like every guy that is, an advisor for us has that same type resume, has been around the game for a long time. Utah Jones in Texas played at UNC, transferred out because of playing time stuff, went to one of the top D2s in the country, won a national championship there, at North Greenville, and played professional baseball. My younger brother, same type scenario, went to Samford, started as a freshman, didn't perform well, went to a JUCO, played well, went to Georgia Southern, had a great rest of his career, played professional baseball. Jeremy Musil in the Midwest, been a scout up there, an associate scout with the Tampa Bay Rays, well known not only amongst almost every college in the country, but in the Midwest, there's not a better guy for parents and players to get help in the process. So every guy that works for us has that same type resume, Bill. But yeah, Murph is just a stud, and so incredible with the work he does and the details he puts into his work. Like I said, he's a stud in what he does, and so beneficial for parents that work with him throughout the process. BA, parents should show the recruiter early on that there is a healthy separation between the parent and the kid. Yeah. And I've told you guys this before, but again, it's like when you're a coach and you're calling a recruit, and in the background, you hear the parent helping him answer questions, or the parent's interrupting him to answer some things. Red flags and red sirens are blaring off. You're like, okay. Because a lot of those conversations, it's like, does this kid have enough confidence to hold a conversation? Because the most important thing in baseball is confidence. Are you confident that you can get the job done in a tight scenario? And so when a parent's answering a bunch of questions for the player, it's a red flag. And this is something with all of our clients we talk about, how to handle yourself on a call with coaches. What's the parent's role in the process, what they should be focused on, what myself or any of our advisors should be focused on, and what we're going to provide. And then what the player should be what his expectations are and what we're expecting of him. I tell every client, if you want to play college baseball now more than ever, you got to be one of the best players in the country. Whether you go D1 or D2, you got to be one of the best high school players in the country. And so your work ethic better show that. You're not willing to put the work in, you're not going to develop, you're not going to get the school that you want. Simple as that. BA, a college coach approached my kid and I walked away to let them talk one-on-one. Yeah, that's 100%. And listen, there's going to be times where the coaches want to talk to you too, and they want to get to know the parents because, again, these are relationships they're going to have. And, a lot of parents travel to the road series when their kid's on the travel roster. So you're going to run into parents in the hotel lobby, and just having a healthy disconnect from your son, but also when the coach wants to talk to you, hey, let them get to know you as well. But the best parents are the ones who, listen, they may be frustrated with playing time or something like that, but they have to deep down, they understand the coach is putting the best players on the field. And there's a reason why he's playing certain players maybe over your son. And some of it is they're with your son now more than you are. And they see how he takes care of his business in practice, in the classroom, in the weight room, in conditioning. I tell guys this all the time, in conditioning, when you're doing your conditioning tests or after your workout, you're doing timed laps. And if you miss a lap, the whole team has to run another one. That's not as much. It's about conditioning the players, but it's also learning, all right, who are the tough guys and who are the guys that are soft and can't deal with their body telling them they can't go anymore. That's all that's about. That gut check day at the beginning of fall, which we had at Georgia Tech every year, you couldn't be in shape enough to handle that gut check day. It was about, all right, who are the guys that are going to get up and keep going when they're dying? Who are the guys that are going to roll over on the ground and I can't get up, oh, I can't do it, oh. And who are the guys that are feeling the exact same thing but are like, all right, coaches, I get up, keep going. And that's what a lot of that is. It's weeding out the guys that are tough and the guys that are soft. And I can tell you, the guys that are tough and the guys that can get up and help the other players up that are struggling. Those are the guys that end up having good careers, just to be honest. So you want to train your mental toughness, do hard things. When you're in the weight room and you don't feel like you can do another set, do another set. When you're doing conditioning at home and you're like, all right, I've done enough, do a few more. Challenge yourself mentally. When your mind's telling you, oh, I can't go any longer, keep going. You can go more than you think. It's about how mentally tough are you and how much you're willing to hurt to get better. And so that's the case with a lot of those guys. Is that the toughest players are the guys that, when you're 0 for 4 on the weekend opening night, do you take it into the rest couple games? Do you take it into Saturday and then Sunday, and then you end up 1 for 12 and you're spiraling? We've all been there. We all go through that. We all have times in the season where we struggle. The guys that end up having success, they don't take it too seriously. Aris Reyes. Parents aren't preparing kids for the real world. They're creating a glass world. Most MLB players from the DR have gone through struggles, tribulations, and hardships. They have hunger and love for the game. 100%, Aris. Like, the most striking thing is I played in the Dominican Winter League for Licey, the Tigres. Campeones, Licey, Campeones. Played for them. And you get to see, I was in Santo Domingo, which Santo Domingo is the capital. It's a nice, as far as, buildings, it's the nicest city in the Dominican that I saw. Cibal's up there in Cibao is nice. Obviously La Romana. But you see the general status of most people in the Dominican Republic, and you realize why those guys are fighting to get out of there and get to the United States and make some money and provide for their family. After games, I'd get food and I'd eat enough of it, but I wouldn't eat all of it. And I'd go out there and there's kids out there like 6 years old, 7 years old that are begging for food. And every night I'd give them a big styrofoam box of, chicken and rice and what we had to eat. And you really get to see what they experience on a daily basis. And, you're driving through the middle of the country away from the city and you see, how some people in the Dominican Republic live. And you're like, it really gives you great perspective on how much I take for granted or I took for granted living in the US. And it actually gives you even more respect for your Latin American teammates in pro ball. Cause you're like, man, the stuff that they went through as kids and stuff just to get here, it's pretty incredible. And 100%, you're right. Those guys in the Dominican, like they're ready for the real world because the real world hits them when they're about 5 years old. And a lot of kids in the U.S., like I said, a lot of parents make excuses for the kid anytime something goes wrong. That wasn't your fault. The coach shouldn't have put you in that position or this or that. And it's like, luckily I had a dad in Major League Baseball. So it's like he would call me out whenever I did something wrong. And every game in pro ball, I'd call him after the game and he'd say, why'd you do that? What was your thought process there? I don't know if you should have done that. A great job in that at bat. Like just objective feedback every single game. And every game I would call him. And when I was in Colorado Springs, he's on the East Coast with Atlanta. I'd have to, or in Boston, when he was with Boston, maybe we'd have to call him the next morning. But every day I called him because I wanted to know what he thought. Craig Sisson. Hope I'm saying that right. What year of high school do you start working with clients? Thanks. Typically, we'll work, I would say freshman or sophomore year. I mean, obviously we work with juniors, but like the juniors now, so your 2026s, we'll probably majority work with juniors and sophomores. But I work with freshmen as well, just because like part of this is, Craig, like a lot of what we do is obviously like our network of coaches, relationships we have. I say it all the time, but like, just take University of Tennessee, for example. Their recruiting coordinator, Josh Elander, played with him for 2 years in pro ball. Their director of recruiting, Luke Bonfield, played with him in pro ball. Their strength coach, Quentin Everhart, he was me and Josh Elander's strength coach in pro ball. Steven Rodriguez at Stanford, played with him for a year in pro ball. Kirk Neuenheis, the head coach and big leaguer at Azusa Pacific, played with him in pro ball. So we have a great network of coaches just from relationships. It's a tight-knit group in college and professional baseball, and they're pretty interlinked. So we do that, but also it's like helping the kid develop and knowing what he needs to focus on and how he can take his career into his own hands and turn himself into a totally different player. So I actually really like working with like the freshmen because they're kind of a blank slate. You know, a kid who's a junior, he's got a shortened time frame to really improve and see where he can get to. But a kid who's a freshman, man, if they're willing to put the work in, I've had kids that have signed on as freshmen, and I'm like, who knows where this kid's going to end up, just talent-wise, and have ended up committing to like top-tier mid-major programs in the country, Power 4 schools, because with 2 or 3 years, like they've bought in and they've put the work in and they've turned themselves into just a stud. So hope that answers your question. Bill, I think travel ball is hurting kids too. There's no competition for positions, and it shows up when they get to college and have to compete for the first time. Yeah, and like the big issue, Bill, is like a lot of parents, if the kid doesn't play, like they think their son's a shortstop, and in reality, he's not going to play shortstop at the next level. And a kid who's good at shortstop's playing over him, they think the coach doesn't like him. Like a big issue, because and like Bill, you played professional baseball, so we can look at a player and be like, that kid's definitely better than my son at that position. Or that kid's really good, or that kid, I don't know if that kid shouldn't be playing there. We can see that. But most parents who don't have like a background in baseball at all, they don't really know what they're looking at. And it's like what Aris was saying, like parents are just like making excuses for their son, or saying, all right, well, that team's not going to play, we're going to go to a different team. Which, like, fine if you want to get playing time at his main position, which I do say in travel ball, like you want to play your main position, so coaches can see you at that position. If they think if I tell them you're a shortstop and you're playing left field, like they're not going to be able to evaluate you. But travel ball is also hurting because everyone's playing on these turf fields now, and every scout I talked to said American infielders are getting worse and worse because turf. You don't have to charge the ball as much. Your footwork's not as important because it just skips. The ball keeps bouncing, easier hops. And like Aris said, the kids in the Dominican are playing on like a brutal field playing surface. And those kids, you can tell, you get to pro ball, the Latins are just different. They're just different in the middle infield. Very few Americans can play shortstop in the major league level. Very few. The Latin American players in the infield are just different. There's nowhere else to explain it. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And you know, you guys get to college, they don't, like you said, they've never competed for a spot because, you know, their high school team, they didn't play, so they moved to a different high school. Travel ball team, they didn't play that position, so they moved to a different travel ball team. And they kind of think that's what the portal is now. Well, the coach doesn't like my son, so we're going in the portal. And it's like, well, you don't have any stats to back up why you should be in the portal, and now you're going to have to go like way down a level. Competing for a spot, like you and I know this, Bill, like college baseball is like the big leagues in the sense that it's all about winning, nothing else. Sure, you're going to develop your guys as best you can, but you're not giving a guy at bats so he can continue to develop. You're giving a guy at bats because you think he's going to give you the best chance to win. And those coaches, which a lot of them now are making a lot of money, if they want to keep making that money, they have to win every year. So like this is like, it's all the incentives point to a coach has to play the guys he thinks are the best 9 players. I'm sorry guys, but coaches are not playing people because they like him over your son or anything like that. They're playing the best guys they think they have. Because if they don't win, they don't have a job. Craig, thank you. Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for the question. Appreciate the comments in the chat. You guys are awesome today. Just been like nonstop questions. So we got another thing to talk about here. Excuse me. Chipper Jones, who, again, probably, you know, one of the best, if not the best switch hitters of all time. My dad in a long time, in a stream a long time ago when I wasn't doing it very consistently, talked about like the craziest story, the craziest thing he ever saw. And this is something that people get wrong because they think, oh, there's guest hitters in the big leagues. Like Chipper Jones was always called like the best guest hitter ever. It's not a guess when like tendencies of pitchers. It's like, I know in this situation he's most likely to throw this. It's not really a guess. Well, Chipper Jones, when he was hurt, and like I think the year before he retired, when Doc Holliday was throwing his perfect game, I believe, my dad was down in the clubhouse, and Chipper was down there watching Doc Holliday because he was hurt. I think the game was in a delay or something was going on. And he said for 4 innings straight, he sat there and Chipper Jones called every single pitch correctly that Doc Holliday was going to throw. Meaning, hey, he's going to go sinker down and away here. He's going to go slider, try to get him to chase off the plate. He's going to go, hey, get over slider for strike one. And he called every single pitch. And my dad said it was just like one of the most unbelievable things he'd ever seen. And one of the reasons why Chipper Jones was as great as he was, because and that's baseball IQ. I'm going to be doing a video later this week because I had a guy make a comment on YouTube about, what's a framework for maybe developing baseball IQ. So I'm working on that right now. I'm going to have that out. I think it's going to be really beneficial. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But this is Chipper Jones talking about Teacher Man. As you guys know, I've talked about him a bunch. And again, like, I'm not a big believer in what he teaches. I think it could work for some people with certain swing issues. So I'm not saying like no one will see any benefit from him. But again, I don't agree with a lot of stuff he does. And this is Chipper Jones saying what he thinks about watching some of Teacher Man's videos. This is hard to watch. I really feel like the kid is saying, seriously? This is how a used car salesman sells hitting. So I want you to watch this video and let me know what you think.
Even though all the weight's up here, all you got to do is get it there. Gravity's going to help you. Centrifugal force is going to help you. But when you start elongating the path, now you're muscling this barrel instead of just releasing it and letting it come around. Even though all
okay,
the weight's
so
up here,
has anybody ever seen a major league hitter swing like this? And like, this is one of the things I talk about with Teacher Man is he always straw mans what other people teach. So you see him showing an example of like a swing he doesn't like, and he's doing this, like a super steep, hands way out in front swing, and like no one's teaching that right now. No one's teaching that. What most guys, like the best hitting coaches that are, hitting coaches in the big leagues now, guys that I work with, like Donnie Ecker, who's with the Rangers, Robert Van Scoyoc with the Dodgers, who's obviously had so much success. It's about getting that bat into an adjustable plane, getting it into the slot, and then, the lower half is creating that space, then the hands are catching up. And so no one's teaching what he's saying, but it's just like, a lot of players are trying to do this that are in like high school and in middle school, and it's just totally destroying their swings. It's making here's a rule of thumb, guys. The more vertical bat angle you have, so the more vertical your bat is coming through the zone, the higher the propensity for swing and miss. So if you're teaching a kid to have a more vertical bat, you're teaching him, essentially, you're creating a swing that's going to swing and miss a bunch. And so, like, that's what you're seeing in the big leagues and, somewhat in college, but college coaches are like, they understand that putting the ball in play is important because defenses in college are just not great. So I'm interested, like, what you guys think about that clip, because it's just, it's just so ridiculous. But actually, Teacher Man actually made a post and called out Hal Steinbrenner and said, if he hired him, he could make him a Juan Soto once a year. He could develop a Juan Soto in his organization every year. Which, like, guys, can we just be honest? Like, how ridiculous is that? You're saying you're going to create, again, one of the one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball every year. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? But oh well. Reese Reyes. I live in Maryland and from Puerto Plata City, where Carlos Martinez, Bartolo Colon, Eddie Gonzalez, among other players. Oh, okay, yeah. My favorite place to play was in I forget the city name for the Estrellas, the Stars. It's just east of Santo Domingo. Reese, you can probably get it. San Pedro de Macorís, San Pedro. And there's that big tree in the outfield, and there's always like little kids up in the tree, and they're trying to get you to throw them a ball, and they're always like, "Hey, Mister! Hey, Mister! Hey, Mister! Hey, Mister! Hey, look! Hey, Mister!" And they're trying to get you to turn around. They're like, "Hey, throw me a ball." It was fun, but there's that big tree in the outfield, and they're always up there during BP. Bill Wallace, not a fan at all. He's in this for the money and notoriety. Yeah, and again, it's like I'm not a person that says like you have to have played at a high level to coach hitting. I don't necessarily believe that. I do think it's it's good to have that. Makes you more on the surface level trustworthy. But like it gets me when any criticism, like I made a video about him and like I got 100 comments from people that love him, and they all said, you just don't understand what he teaches. It's obvious you have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm just like, I hit 290 in my career in professional baseball over 7 years. Like I kind of understand hitting a little bit. And I do know, like now I know, like I was a really good hitter. I didn't have like the best swing, at least the swing that was going to produce a lot of like extra base hits and stuff like that. I hit a lot of singles, and later on in my career, I started hitting for more power, but it was probably too late at that point. And I was in an organization at the time who really, really valued power over everything. So I was kind of on the back burner because of that, but I know something about hitting. And I knew guys that had worked with Teacher Man and all of a sudden careers fell off. I'm not going to say names because I'm not going to call players out, but like everyone in professional baseball knew this guy, and everyone knew, majority of guys were like, stay away, do not go. And again, like Aaron Judge has had a lot of success, but Aaron Judge is a freak. Aaron Judge is 6'7". He can sit on his back leg and still cover the outside corner. He's that big. BA Steinbrenner did hire George Costanza. That's true. That was George though, not Hal. That was George Steinbrenner. That was Mr. Steinbrenner. But I mean, yeah, ridiculous to like call out the owner of the Yankees and say, if you're really serious, I can create. He said, I can create a Juan Soto once every year. And it's like, okay, if that's true and they actually believe that, wouldn't he have a job? Like, this is what I tell to all of his like big supporters. I'm like, there's a bunch of hitting coaches that are kind of new school hitting coaches that really do know what they're talking about that have jobs in the big leagues now. And they're having a lot of success because they're not, they understand the old school stuff and the new school stuff. And they kind of are the blending of the best of both worlds, which I think is kind of the best way. Like the old school teaching kids approach, stuff like that. But also the new school, like you get the metrics and you understand what the swing plane is. You can make adjustments a lot easier because you have the objective data in front of you. But I just think nothing he does is even based on data. He just kind of like says, this is the way to do it. So he never played and he doesn't even use data, but like he's supposed to know everything. And he uses like side-by-side swings of like Barry Bonds and stuff, but a swing has to cover the whole zone, not just one pitch. So you look at one pitch and say, this is what your swing's supposed to look like. Okay, maybe you're great at that one pitch, but when you get busted up and in or a slider down and away, your swing's not going to look like that. It's going to look different. So if you don't have an adjustable swing, you're screwed. San Pedro de Macorís is where Tatis, Sano, Cano, Julio Cesar, Franco, Felix Jones, Felix Jose, Alfonso Soriano, and more. Yeah. I mean, that Dominicans like that. I mean, I remember walking into Licey in Santo Domingo for first game, and like Vlad Guerrero Sr. was in there, and Like Pedro Martinez was there, and it's funny because like you have your coaching staff and you have a lot of guys that like are just like big league Hall of Famers or close to it. Certainly like best players in the Dominican ever, and they kind of just walk into the clubhouse and hang out. It was I mean it was an awesome experience. I loved it. Just the culture, baseball culture down there. It's like every game is do or die. I mean they're loud as can be. You lose, they ain't happy. They're booing. You make a big play or you get a big hit. They love you. Yeah, I enjoyed the Dominican so much. It was like it was an experience that will just kind of change your perspective and how you view not only yourself but like the situation you're in and everything like that. And I remember traveling across the country to go play. I think we were going to see Bow, and we're driving through the country, and we stopped at this kind of like way station restaurant type thing that had a bunch of different like places you could eat. And all the Dominican guys were looked at the Americans were like, "Hey, don't eat that. You're gonna get sick. Don't eat that. Like your bodies are not used to. You're not gonna be able to handle that." And I never had an issue in the Dominican. I know a lot of guys I played with would get sick from like drinking water in the shower and stuff that got in their mouth. I never had any issues. I ate the food. They said don't eat it, but I had teammates that did have issues. But I loved it, man. It was a cool experience just getting to be a part of it. And I didn't have that great of a showing down there, but that experience I'll always treasure because it was just, my dad knew so many people in the Dominican because he was head of Latin American scouting for the Expos. And so guys that he had known forever, I got to meet and talk with. So it was really cool. But no, guys, I think we're gonna end it here soon. Obviously, like just appreciate all the chat and discussion. I think like this is how we learn and we continue to figure out what's going on in college baseball and recruiting and baseball in general. So I appreciate all the chat and all the questions. Makes it easier to do these things. As I'm almost not even. I have like I have an itinerary of what I want to cover, but a lot of times it's like I shouldn't even have to do that because you guys are just asking a lot of really good questions. So appreciate all the questions, guys. Again, if you're looking for help in recruiting, scan this QR code.